July 15th meeting of the Upper Peninsula Energy Task Force. This is Liesl Clark. I'm your fearless leader, Director of the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. So really pleased to see everybody on the line. Thanks to those of you who are able to use videos. It's a wonderful thing. This is our 13th meeting, friends. So we've been doing this a lot. Really appreciate all the time and energy that goes into that, because it's not just these meetings, but it's also the work that you all are doing in between, and then obviously the expertise that you bring to the table for the course of these discussions. So just as a reminder, we are tasked with looking at the UP's overall energy needs and discussing how they're currently being met. We have worked through phase 1 of the project. We're working on phase 2 of the project. Before we jump in to task force business, I'd like to remind everybody that might be joining us who might not be familiar with where we're at right now, that there's a lot of materials on our website. Oops, that's at michigan.gov /UP Energy Task Force. So if you haven't been following along up until now, that's your opportunity to do lots of background and lots of research to get you to where we're at today. We will be taking comment. We always do at our meetings. We'll take comment during our public comment session, which is scheduled at 3 p.m. Please feel free to raise your hand, send us an email to EGLE, EGLE-UP Energy@michigan.gov if you're interested in making sure that you have a chance to give comment. Or you can put something in the chat feature on Teams as well if that's working for you. So we certainly invite comments and certainly receive a lot of it, not only through these meetings formally, but then also formally through email and through submissions to our website. So thanks to everybody who's been participating in that way. So before we get into business, I'm just going to go ahead and call through the roll so that we know who all is on the line, and it'll make sure that we're able to do all that business accurately. So first, I'm going to see if we've got Mike Brucey on the line. Mike Brucey, the first of our 4 mics. Oh, okay. We don't have a mic yet. Tanya, I see you on video. Hi, Tanya.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon.
Great. Thanks for being here. Chris Bowman. Chris, are you with us today? All right. Dave Camps. Dave, are you with us today? Oh, is my internet spotty? No, I'm okay. All right. So Dave Camps. Okay. Let's see. Jen Hill. Oh, I'm sorry. I've almost skipped our second Mike. Mike Formansky, whom I can see. So I know he's here.
Yes.
Mike
Good afternoon.
Jen Hill. Are you with us, Jen? Nope. Okay. I'm worried that my phone's messing stuff up because I'm surprised we are missing some folks. Douglas Jester. Douglas, are you here? No, Douglas. Okay, we are short folks today. Aaron Johnson, I see you in you're in my bottom right corner of the screen.
Hello, Director.
Hello,
Aaron.
Everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Right. Let's see. Mr. Kachiver, also right up in my top right. You are right there in your office.
Right here.
Looking good. Thanks for being here.
Can you hear me?
Yep. You sound great. All right. Third, Michael Larson. Are you with us, Michael Larson? Nope, we're missing Michael. No, it's our summer days, I guess. And then we've got the fourth Mike of the apocalypse, Mike Nystrom. Are you with us, Mr. Nystrom?
I am here.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. He wouldn't miss one of these if he got married. The only time he missed one.
Hi.
Tony, I heard you on the line already. You're with us?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair, and others. Thank you, and good afternoon.
Thanks for being here. Sorry for the technical challenges. We'll try to do our best to enable you watching on slides too, and hopefully we can get you logged in.
I think it's human error.
Okay. General Rogers, good to see your face.
I am here. Thank you.
I'm glad that your schedule allows you, because you've got a lot of stuff going on. So we know that when you're with us, things are a little bit better.
Either that or I'm running away from it all. You don't know.
Well, you're welcome to run towards us. We accept that.
Okay.
Commissioner Scripps.
Good afternoon.
I tripped over it too. Good afternoon. Roman, are you with us? No Roman. Alrighty. And then Mr. Schwartz. Chris, are you with us today? All right, no Chris Schwartz. And then Tanya Sweener.
Here.
Yay. Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
Kimber, did we get any declines from folks? It seems like we've got a few folks missing. I'm just a little nervous about.
Yeah, we did not get any declines from anyone. I just checked my email to see if anyone's having trouble. I don't see anything yet.
Okay.
I'll put something in the chat if I do see something.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for helping me watch that. I appreciate it. Alrighty, so we've got a little bit of business in front of us before we get to our awesome list of presenters for the day. So first of all, I want to look at our agenda from last session and our meeting minutes from last session. So you received this July 8th. You did get a corrected version yesterday was Tuesday. So the agenda that's in front of us, let's go ahead and move it, and then I'll give you a little bit of an overview. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
So moved. Nystrom.
Thank you, Nystrom. And then let's have a little bit of discussion before we adopt. So we worked to coalesce around the feedback that we were getting in the last couple of sessions to talk about what type of information you all would be interested in. So today we're organized around electric utilities' role in serving Upper Peninsula customers. So we've got a presentation from our own Mike Formansky, who's going to talk a bit about the city of Escanaba and help us understand how that also reflects on the Upper Peninsula broadly. And then we have Tom Carpenter, who's the executive director of the Marquette Board of Light and Power. So that'll be a nice complement to the Escanaba and UP focus. And then we are also joined by Brett French, who I think many of you are familiar with. Brett has a long career in utility work. Most recently, he's at UPCO, and he's going to talk a bit about UPCO's utility service. So with that, we'll take a few minutes to digest that at the end and then receive any public comments if anyone is interested in sharing comments with all of you today. So with that, I'd love any discussion you've got about the agenda, and then we'll go ahead and adopt it if folks are comfortable doing that.
I second the motion.
Ooh, I didn't second it. I didn't ask for a second. Thank you, Dan.
You're good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Aye.
Great. Motion is adopted to approve today's agenda. So let's go back and look at our meeting minutes from June 9th. You received those on July 13th, and our fantastic secretary had an opportunity to review and comment on those ahead of time. So thank you, Tanya, for serving in that role for all of us. So do I have a motion to move the minutes from June 9th?
So moved.
All right, I'll take Formansky's move because I saw his hand. Thank you, Mike. Do I have a second?
Support.
Second from Jim. Thank you, Jim. Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motions from the June 9th meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the minutes from the June 9th meeting? All right, minutes have passed. All right, so before we get into the presentations, we've talked a bit about future meetings, and I'm curious as to how people feel about this. It seems like we're probably in some version of this virtual state for some time going forward. I am inclined to say that longer meetings don't work very well virtually. So that lends itself to saying that it probably makes sense for us to meet maybe a little bit more, but have them be shorter meetings. So certainly curious about everyone's thoughts on that, if that feels like a good fit to all of you. If that were the path that we would take, my suggestion would be to skip August. We've been meeting, I think every month was the notes that Kimber made for me. We've been meeting a lot. So we've been meeting every month since July 9th, 2019. So my inclination would be to maybe look at skip in August, but then we've got some dates that you all have already approved and held on your calendar that we would certainly hold those dates and use those dates, but then maybe add a September date in and add in a November date as well. So just curious if there's any discussion from task force members about whether that seems like the right approach.
I like that, Liesl. This is Tanya. It definitely seems like there's still a lot to tackle. So, but I agree that long meetings don't work remotely very well. I think it's a great approach.
Thanks, Tanya. Other comments?
Madam Chair, Tony here. I agree. I think the shorter meetings, especially virtually, are better. We've had some great interaction, and I think that can continue and the course we're going. And I agree with skipping August as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I'd like any excuse to get to the UP myself, but and I love seeing all of you in person, but I think we've got some confines around us for a little while. So the good news is virtually seems to be working well for us, and I certainly think we've been getting some great presentations, which we were doing in person too, but it does kind of open up the ability to have people, you know, participate from afar. So that's a good thing. Okay, so let me think. Okay, so we've got a few dates. I'm just going to share. Oh, I should also say Bay Mills has let us know they're canceling all outside events for the rest of the year. So we had been scheduled at Bay Mills for October 7th. So what I would propose we do is hold the meeting dates that we've got, and then we'll add in some dates as well. And if we have the ability to do things in person, you know, we'll move quickly and nimbly to add locations to the calendar and just work with all of you. And then folks that can participate in person, you know, we would invite you to do that. And those that need to participate virtually will do that as well. So hopefully there's a glimmer in the future. But in the meantime, we'll be ready to be virtual. So I'm going to propose, and we'll send this to you in email, but I'll just let you know right now while we're talking. We're going to propose Monday, September 14th, which would not be on your calendars yet. Wednesday, October 7th, which should be on your calendar. Friday, November 6th. And then Tuesday, December 15th. And it would be a, 2 to 3-ish hour block somewhere in those days. So we'll email those back out to everybody as well. And feel free to let us know if you've got big conflicts or if you see things that we need to be aware of. All right, with that, oh, no, I did want to mention one other thing. There's been a lot of material that's been made available by a variety of state agencies around the line itself. And I know, obviously, this is something that folks are very interested in. Hi, Michael Larson. Nice to see you. I see you. Hi, Dave Camps. You're on, too. Michael Larson wants to say something, but you're muted.
There's two different meetings going on. So we're in another link that's on the website that has 40 or 50 people waiting. And so we've been waiting in another link. And so there's a variety of people over there that we've just been, including Jen and Douglas and Romanoff and whatnot.
Oh dear.
I'll be honest, I figured something was going on because there were too many of you that have been real regular attendees that weren't here.
I'll check in with our web people to make sure they have this link to add to the website. I'm not sure what other solution there is, but I'll do that right now.
Right, and so I think that would be good. And then again, I don't know how to get that link into everybody that there's hands. I could put the link in the chat box if they want to join that.
I think that's a good suggestion, Michael. Kimber, could Matt hop over there? Oh, I'm sorry.
When you click on the 3 dots, you can bring up show meeting details. And then that has the join link along with the meeting ID and phone number.
Got it. So I'm going to copy join info. I'm going to join that other meeting just real quick, and I'll be back in a hot second.
You know what? We'll just take a pause, and we will wait for you all back here. Michael Larson, do you think that, have you shared that on the other line now?
I'm going to switch over to the other and I'll.
Yeah, and they're going to try to update it apparently on the website, the
Okay.
site with the new information right now. So if folks are in here, and that I guess that may be the best that we're going to be able to do.
Okay.
Matt Tomlinson, can we cancel the other meeting or close it, or is there a way to?
I didn't schedule it. This is the only meeting link that I've provided.
Oh.
My thought is that when the information was updated with the web team, that they may have left an old link in there.
Oh, that could be.
The previous meeting. So I'm just going to ask them to update that.
Okay.
And if Mike Larson shared this meeting information in the chat, that should be helpful.
Unfortunately, for some reason, none of us are able to share anything in the chat box in there because it says we're not a member of that.
Okay.
Chat. So there were 37 folks in that room. So if
Kimber,
you're able to
maybe,
update the website, that'd be great.
I'm guessing that it's the last month's info, so I'll pop in there and see if I can do it.
Kimber, you may just want to send an email to the entire group with the current link.
Okay.
And I'll warn them.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. This is Lisa Clark, and we sadly have 2 lines open right now for this call. And so this is the wrong line. I apologize. Bad news to all of you. So we are working with haste to get all of you the right line where there is another chunk of people. We'll try to post it in the meeting chat, but I guess we've been having some trouble doing that. So, it looks like we've updated the agenda on the website with the correct link. So apologize for the confusion, but please go to the website and pull down the agenda. So it's when you're on the website, go to michigan.gov/WPI Energy Task Force. And then when you're in the box for next meeting, don't join the Teams meeting. Go to the draft agenda and get the info from the draft agenda. So sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings. Thank you for all your patience. Technology is wonderful, but only when it works. I look forward to seeing you on the other line in just a moment. Thank you.
Okay, went over there and made an announcement.
Super. Thanks.
Give her just a second to join us. Actually, you know what? We can probably, if we have task force members, we can probably do business. Probably should look at the agenda and the minutes again real quick. Tanya looks like she's made the right decision, which is to move outside. Okay, so let me check and see. Did we pick up Mike Prusy? Mike Prusy.
Yes, you did.
Yay! Wonderful.
15 minutes in the wrong meeting, and now I'm here where I belong.
You are where you belong, just like everybody else as they'll be joining us. Sorry for the confusion. Technology is great when it works. And I see Douglas, so thank you, Douglas. Glad you found us.
Yes.
I gotta say, once I hit Douglas and Mike wasn't here, Douglas wasn't here, I'm like, okay, this is getting suspicious. Something is going on. I'm glad we solved that. Okay, we've got Michael Larson now. Make my notes. We've got Dan, and did I see Roman? We've got Roman. Yay. Okay. Whew. Feeling so much better. Chris Schwartz, did we pick you up in our escapade of? All right. I don't think I have Chris Schwartz. Okay, and I've got somebody on the chat who's asking if they're on the right line, and I think they are. So this is good. Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry again for the technology snafu. In my book, that's one of the better technology snafus. It could have been much worse. So glad you're all here now. We're just going to go ahead and readopt the minutes and the agenda to make sure that we've done it all properly. For those of you who weren't here, they were unanimous, but we want to make sure that we do it right. So do I have a motion to approve the July 15th agenda? So moved. Do I have a second on the July 15th amendment? Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right. Agenda's in front of us. Our agenda's adopted. Let's look at the June 9th meeting minutes. So again, a motion to approve the June 9th meeting minutes.
So moved.
I'll take Furmansky as a move, and I'll take Kuchever as a second. Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the June 9th meeting minutes? Great, thanks everybody. Okay, so quick catch up to make sure I share what I already said. Bay Mills has let us know that they have canceled on-site meetings for the rest of the year. Sorry, my dog's gonna bark now, just to add to the fun of working from home. So I'm proposing that we continue with meetings, skip August, because you all have been meeting monthly since July 2019. So I'm proposing we skip August, but then keep going with some additional meetings so that we can do shorter meetings. In my humble experience, longer webinars aren't super effective. And so I'd say more frequent but briefer meetings make sense. And so I think that was generally the appetite of the task force. If task force members have concerns with that, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. We will follow up with some dates that we are proposing to all of you to get us from here to the end of the year. So thanks again for all of your time and commitment to this, and most importantly for your expertise. I'm continually really impressed with the questions and the discussion that we get going in follow-up to our really excellent presentations. And we've got some great presentations for you here today too. So just a couple of quick reminders. There's a lot of information, hopefully not out of date, at michigan.gov/UP Energy Task Force for people that may be catching up to where we're at and want to know the breadth of work that this group has put together prior to today. I would also mention that there's a lot of material available for folks that are interested specifically in line 5 on michigan.gov/line 5. James, is that right? Or is there more to that one? I think it's just line 5.
That is right.
Right, just line 5. So that's a consolidation of MPSC information, EGLE information, and DNR information. There's some additional materials from DNR around the easement. That's all publicly out there. So we've been working really hard as the state of Michigan to make sure that any information that we've got is very transparent, as you'll see with that, as well as with the UP Energy Task Force. So there's your little disclaimer up front. If you haven't had a chance and you're interested in those materials, please go check them out. Particularly, there's a permitting timeline that helps you understand what happens when, based on statutory requirements over the next few months. So there's your little sidebar on that one. With that, we're not too far off. We caught up. I was excited to be 7 minutes early. Now we're 5 minutes late, but that's okay. I think we've got time in the agenda to be flexible. So I'm excited to turn it over to our own Mike Furmansky, who's going to talk a bit about electric utility service in the UP and his deep experience in Escanaba. So with that, I get to stop talking. So thank you, Mike. Looking forward to your presentation.
Right, and this worked a couple days ago, so I'm going to try and share my screen here. I can make this work and then show from the beginning. Okay. As Liesl said, questions have been coming up about, different types of providers in the UP. Being a municipal utility here in Escanaba, I've been with the city about 20 years now. And being on the task force, I guess I raised my hand to, cover UP municipals kind of in general, not really focusing on any one. But just kind of an overview. And if anybody has questions, especially specific to Escanaba, I could answer them. But moving on here, slide 2. Type of electric utilities. Basically, there's 3 types. There's the investor-owned utility, which is a for-profit utility owned by shareholders. Up here in the UP, we have the UP IOUs include Northern States Power out on the west end, and then UMERC and UPCO. Second type is rural electric cooperatives. Here in UP, we have 3 of them. Co-ops are a member-owned utility governed by a board of directors that are elected by the membership. UP co-ops include Elder Delta, Cloverland, and Ontonagon County. And then there's municipal electric utilities, which is either a department within the municipal government, like I think most of them are, I know Escanaba is, or a publicly owned standalone utility like Marquette, the Marquette Board of Light and Power, which, has a relationship with the city, but, they're one step removed from the city. And there's 12 of them here, 12 municipal utilities in the UP. The next page is just a map showing where all these munis in Michigan are located. Statewide, there's about 40 municipal utilities. 12 of them are in the UP, kind of covered all over the place. I mean, physically located from Wakefield on the west end all the way down to Sturgis, right down by the southern border of Michigan. Size-wise, anywhere from Daggett, which is in the UP with a couple hundred customers, all the way up to Lansing, which has more than 100,000 customers. Marquette Board of Light and Power is the largest in the UP, and Executive Director Tom Carpenter will be making a presentation specifically on Marquette Board of Light and Power after this presentation. Due to the small sizes of many of these UP municipals, they've joined joint action agencies to help them with different processes that we have to go through, whether it's wholesale energy or renewable energy plans or green pricing programs or any number of things. So across the UP, there's at least 3 that I'm aware of that members are UP munis are members of. Probably the biggest, maybe the best well known up here is WPI Energy, which are a full service joint action agency with 51 members in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And by joint action, by full service, I mean that, all their members get all their power from WPI Energy. I know they offer a number of other services if you need help, with metering or engineering studies or procurement of materials. That they offer lots of services for their members. The second one is MPPA, Michigan Public Power Agency, which is a project-based joint action agency with 22 members and 6 associate members, which are all located in Michigan. Escanaba is not a member of MPPA, but we do participate in some of the services they offer. So, and I think there are other, so maybe I'm one of the 6 associate members they have listed there. Great Lakes Utilities, GLU, it's a project-based joint action agency with 12 members in Michigan and Wisconsin. We are a member of Escanaba is a member of Great Lakes Utilities, so I'm most familiar with them. It's very much cafeteria plan. You can take energy from them if you want or not. You can take capacity. You can take meter data management work from them. It's very, like I said, cafeteria. Take what you need, and find your other services elsewhere if you want. Okay, here's a list of the 12 UP municipal electric utilities. Baraga, Crystal Falls, Daggett, Escanaba, Gladstone, Lawrence, Marquette, Negaunee, Newberry, Norway, Stevenson, and Wakefield. And the ones with the little star on them there, those are the 6 WPI Energy members. Marquette is an MPPA member, and like I said, Escanaba, we are a Great Lakes Utility member. Power supply and reliability for UP municipals. Like I said, WPI Energy, it's a full requirements joint action agency. So they're all 6 of their members. They actually have 7 members in the UP. Elder Delta Cooperative is also a member of them. But all their members get all their energy capacity requirements through WPPI, and they get their energy from a mix of different sources. I know they're they have wind, they have solar, they have fossil fuel generation. They're pretty heavy in renewables. I know they're 14% or 17% renewable, and then they're over 30% carbon free electricity for their members. Others like Escanaba here, we get power supply from investor-owned utilities, energy marketers, some self-supply like Marquette does, market purchases, or some combination of above. And municipal electric utilities deliver more reliable service. Studies I've seen shows that munis their customers average about half the outage time per year as compared to customers of private utilities. Municipal utility features and value. Municipal electric utility meets the unique needs of its community. Some UP munis offer other services such as cable TV or internet service. Municipal utilities provide a large payment in lieu of taxes, or a PILT, to the city's general fund. National average is 5.4%. I believe we're at 5.6% here in Escanaba. The studies I've seen show that IOUs contribute about 4.8% of tax money to the city's general fund where they're located. Municipal electric utilities meet state mandated renewable energy requirements, and many of us go beyond those requirements. There are UP munis that own hydroelectric assets and others that own photovoltaic assets. Municipal electric utilities follow state mandated energy optimization, or otherwise known as energy waste reduction requirements. Many of the munis actually had programs in place before Public Act 295 of the 2009 mandate. That is going to, oh, I made a mistake there. That act has a new number now. But the Energy Waste Reduction Act, that's going to sunset in 2021 for munis, which will allow us to better serve their communities, more, more customized, more, local flavor to the programs we'll be offering. And the last sheet here, page 8, this, I guess, where the rubber meets the road, what are the rates? I know in the last meeting we had, there was a lot of question about rates. This is the 2018 rates information from the Energy Information Administration. Not every UP Muni is on here, but these are the ones that were on the list. And these rates, on the far right column where it shows the rates, those are the all-in cost. So it's the energy cost, but it also includes, the meter cost or any other charges. They take, all the charges they recover or collect from residential customers, and then divide that by all the kilowatt hours they've sold to residential customers. And that number is in cents per kilowatt hour. So like Northern States Power, their residential for 2018 was 11.95 cents per kilowatt hour, all inclusive, all charges included with that. And yeah, that's my last slide.
Great, thanks for the overview, Mike. That was really helpful. Do we have questions specifically for Mike before we invite Tom Carpenter from Marquette to talk a bit more in depth?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Tony Ratasky.
Please, Tony.
Mike, great presentation, and you really whipped through it fast. But one of the questions that I have is, you mentioned earlier, and I think you meant the munis have a certain percentage of renewable energy. Could you go back to that and tell us what that was?
Oh boy, going back to like 2011, this started. We were at how did that one go? I think it went like 2.2%, 5%, and then 10%. Anyways, we've been at 10% for a number of years. Right now, we're kind of in a ramp. We've got this year and next year at 12.5%, and then it's going up to 15%. And you meet that with MIRECs. So MIRECs are generated basically on a one-for-one basis with megawatt hours of renewable energy. There are some bonus MIRECs that can be created if the project was built with Michigan labor, Michigan materials, things like that. But basically it's one for one, maybe a little more than one for one. And then you have to procure, if you don't generate the MIRECs yourself, you have to procure the MIRECs to meet your, well, now 12.5% of your last 3 years average load, and then you retire those RECs through the MIRECs.org system. Historically, Escanaba, we bought all our RECs up until this year. We put in a solar facility here, 2018, it was 0.9 megawatts, and now just this year we expanded it to 1.29 megawatts. So that's generating some of our requirements. Otherwise, we've gone out on the market and we've had to buy RECs from other utilities or private companies that generate them to meet our requirements.
Thank you, Mike, question just to steal chairperson's prerogative. Going back to your slide on the different joint action agencies. You talked through WPPI. You said they had 14% renewable right now, and then you shared a percentage of their portfolio that's carbon free, but I missed that number. Can you talk about that again?
Yeah, I've actually been told 17% renewable
17.
for WPPI, and I can't remember the numbers. It's 33 or 35, but they're over 30% is carbon free energy.
Other questions for Mike?
Yeah, this is Michael Larson.
You got a bunch. Michael Larson.
Yeah, quick question for you there on kind of your energy optimization programs and the kind of the sunsetting of the current EWR law. How do you see the energy waste reduction programs kind of being customized for munis, and I guess co-ops? You're coming from the muni side of it, for those that it is actually sunsetting for. What do you see it being? How do you see it becoming customized?
Maybe focusing more in areas where we've run out before. We've had a number of customers, call us, fairly early in the year. They'll call us in April and say, "Hey, I'm, doing updating the lighting in my commercial business," and come to find out that the money that had been set aside for that sort of program had already been expired for the year. So they still get their money. They just, they don't get it in May or June. They got to wait till the next calendar year when the program restarts to get their money. So that'd be something we could do. Other things, nothing's finalized, and I'd run it through my board, but perhaps electric vehicle stuff, either a rebate on electric vehicles or electric vehicle charging stations to try and encourage the speed up their adaptation up here.
Makes sense.
All right, I saw Jen Hill and Tanya. Jen, you want to go first? Jen, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you. Can you speak at all to, we talked a lot about transmission in the last session. What's the relationship with the munis and transmission? And in particular, what triggered my question was that the investor-owned utilities own a lot of the, or have big stakes in the transmission companies. Is there anything similar in the muni world, or does it all go through these joint action agencies?
Well, for Escanaba, we're standalone basically, get limited service from Great Lakes Utilities. But as far as transmission goes, we are what's known as a Network Integrated Transmission Service customer, NITS customer. So we deal directly with ATC. We get billed monthly from ATC. I'm not 100% sure how, and we do not own any, have any ownership in ATC. When ATC was formed back in the early 2000s, I was not the superintendent at that time, and for whatever reasons, Escanaba made the decision to not become a part owner. I know there are municipals that are part owners, and yeah, they get a return on that investment for being part owner. I guess I'm not sure what each muni is doing. I just don't know.
Tanya Kozlowski.
Yeah, Mike, do you have the breakdown of how many customers are served by the different categories of providers?
I could get that information off the EAE information. It's listed there. I don't have it in front of me, but I could get it.
Other questions for Mike from task force members? And I think Mike is probably going to be willing to engage in questions as we go forward too. So we hopefully can call on him
Dave
again.
Carpenter, Mike.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
Would it be possible to get data on the generation of each one of these utilities and how much of it is renewable? That would be a very good data point to look at, considering where we're going in the future. Renewables, how much of their offerings is renewable? Like you stated before, I know UPCO's a little bit, I think I know it, but I've heard a couple of numbers from them, but the rest of these munis and we don't know.
Yeah, I would think that information would be available. Again, like I said, I'm most familiar with Escanaba, obviously. We get all our energy from NextEra Energy Resources. We just reach to that supplier and ask them what percentage of their portfolio is renewable. And I know they're very high. I believe they're the largest renewable energy provider in the United States, but that doesn't mean that's what we get. And it gets complicated when you have renewable energy and then you have your kilowatt hours and you have your capacity, and then you have your your renewable energy credits, which are all three separate entities. So if you had a power purchase agreement on a solar facility or a wind farm, you could get one, two, or all three of those products off of that PPA, but they can be totally decoupled. So like I said, I know NextEra is very high on renewables and carbon free. I can't tell you today what percentage of the power we buy from them is renewable, but I would think they could supply that information. And then, like I said, we do have that small solar facility here, which that's behind the meter, just built into our distribution system. Which we are now getting some of our energy off of that facility.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
Was that another question, Dave?
No, I said thank you, but yeah, since you offered, what are Escanabas' plans for renewable future? Are they being aggressive? I know there are other utilities are going after some renewable, whether it's hydro or solar or whatever. What are your plans in Escanaba?
So far, we're very happy with the output we've seen from our existing solar facility. So yeah, before we even started the first build, there was talk of a potential second build. We had two pretty good sites that we had identified. Just started with the one, and we're happy with the results we saw first year of operation. Then it took some time to get it together to do the expansion, but that was completed in May of this year. We're already looking ahead to a different site, putting in more solar. So we plan to continue expanding it.
Excellent.
So like part of that investment. Oh, sorry, Dave.
Go ahead. One more follow up on that. Where do you? I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, but I have my own thoughts on this too about. Where do you think the future of the UP energy mix should go from your standpoint, being in the industry? I think electrification is probably on its way from what I understand. I just wonder what you think about it.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I said earlier to Michael Larson's questions about, energy optimization, energy waste stuff. Yeah, that's what we'd be looking at, encouraging stuff like that. Like the electric vehicles, I think has a huge potential up here. As far as the energy mix, our solar is working very well. It's actually working from our predictions that we got from the PV watts modeling we did before we built it. We are actually, with 1 year of operation, we were a little below expectations energy wise, but we were a little bit better than we expected at the time of our system peak, which helped reduce our capacity needs. So energy wise, we were a little below expectations, but dollar wise, we were actually a hair above expectations. And that's the original build is 2 years old, but things are moving so fast. I mean, from our first build to our expansion, even, at that time, 330 watt panels, monofacial were kind of the standard. So that's what we built on our original. This expansion we just did is 355 watt bifacial panels. And we've been in talk with Michigan Tech of doing some study there to see see exactly, not so much in the summertime, we're not expecting much, but in the wintertime, see how much energy we can generate off the light reflected off the snow. So we're looking forward to get that going. I don't know, the solar works for us. Yeah, we have had some months. February of 19, we had terrible production. We had a 3-foot leading edge on those panels, but we just, we got 6 inches of snow, it warmed up enough to melt, and it just kept piling up right at the edge until it finally got 3 feet high, and then it backed the snow off the panels. So February 19, we had terrible production. But other than that, but that's one of the things we're seeing with the bifacials is that by generating a little bit of electricity off the back, you're going to have some heat. Hopefully, maybe enough heat generated off the back side that it melts the snow off the front side, and you don't have that much of an issue losing production due to snow. Because people say you could go wipe them off, but we were warned you don't ever want to touch those panels and run the risk of scratching them. Try and get a little bit of benefit in February, which isn't a great month for production, to have diminished output for the next 20 years or much life you have left on them.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like it's a design consideration for that snow buildup on the front, minimum distance at maximum tilt. But UP requires specific technology for snow shedding and other things we're finding. So thanks, you did a great job too on the presentation.
And ours is it's a fixed system. We had to do that because of its proximity to the Delta County Airport. We really wanted to look at single axis, but if those single axis units fail, they're going to fail flat, and then we were going to have glare issues. So that option came off the table pretty quickly. But the second site we'd be looking at, we'd try and put single axis there, which would help too a lot with the snow. By that thing rotating every day, hopefully it would dump the snow off of it.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Sure.
Yeah, great presentation, Mike. So just another clarifying question, because I'm curious. When you talk about all of your power getting bought from NextEra, and that's in capacity power and RECs, so the piece that the solar offsets then would be the REC payments that you would make either to NextEra, whomever else you're paying to. Right. Is that right? Is that how your math then needs to work?
Right, and actually we have never bought MyRecs from NextEra. We've bought them. Actually, one of our munis in the UP this last year, that's who we bought our MyRecs from, a fellow muni that owns a hydroelectric dam. We were able to buy MyRecs from them. In the past, we bought them from North American Hydro. And it seemed like there was somebody else in there, but.
Can I ask which UP dam you were buying them from?
City of Norway.
Okay. I know people that are interested in that. I had another question. I lost it. Anybody else got questions for Mike? Thanks for the presentation and for letting us ask these.
Yeah, I have one more question for you, Mike. This is Michael Larson again. What is your ROI expected on that solar installation that you have there?
We didn't. I guess we didn't really look at it so much for ourselves. It's a long story, but we inadvertently ended up with a fairly large pot of money from the Public Act 295 on the renewable energy side. We over collected for a number of years, and that was when we owned the plant, and we thought we were going to burn wood cubes in with the coal in the coal plant. So we collected at a pretty high rate. And then we kind of changed course and sold the plant, and we're working on selling the plant. And we ended up buying RECs much cheaper than we would have generated them. Excuse me. So we had a surplus that, figured this was the best use for it, was to build solar. And I guess we didn't concern ourselves that much on what the return was going to be. It was just, we just felt it was a much better use of that money to have it in a solar facility than just sitting in the bank collecting, very little interest. This is a community solar facility, so we've let any of our customers buy into it. We have told them that without the investment tax credit that they were looking at, we were estimating a 14 or 15-year payback. With the 30% investment tax credit, we were estimating an 11-year payback. And like I said, the first year, it's somewhat based off of its production, kilowatt hours and kilowatts at the time of our system peak, but it's also based off our contracts, because we pay them avoided costs. So we figure that's the most fair way to deal with it. If I don't know, nobody else in this panel lives in Escanaba, but if there was a homeowner that bought 10 panels, we feel we'll pay them the exact same value that we would pay to NextEra for the energy, NextEra for the capacity, and American Transmission Company for the transmission service. So it varies every year. Right now, I believe it's 7.2 cents that we're paying for an avoided cost to our solar panel owning customers. So long answer, I guess it depends if you take advantage of the investment tax credit or not, but it's 14 years, 11 years, somewhere in there.
Great. Great question, Michael, and very interesting answer, Mike. I'm going to keep us moving and hope that Mike Formansky is willing to engage in additional conversations later. So
Sure.
Thanks, Mike. That was really great.
Thank you.
All right. Now I'd like to invite Tom Carpenter from Marquette to share with us. We're really interested in the presentation. Appreciate you being willing to do this, Tom.
Yep, no problem. I think Mike's screen is still being shared. Can I share over the top of that?
I think you can.
Oh, I just stopped it, Tom.
There it is. Okay. Is my screen up? Can everybody see that?
You look good.
Okay, so I don't think everybody in the group knows me. So quick introduction, Tom Carpenter, Executive Director of the Marquette Board of Light and Power here in Marquette, Michigan. And just one quick point, do you guys want to ask questions as we go along, or would you like me to wait to the end? I'm good either way.
Whatever you want, Tom. We're a very accommodating group.
Okay, well, how about we answer or ask questions kind of as we go along? Everything will be fresh in my mind and yours as we move along here. So
you don't mind. So I'm going to let people know that they can go ahead and just try to interrupt in the least obtrusive way possible.
Sounds great. Now I will try to pause here and there. So Marquette Board of Light and Power, we are a municipal electric utility owned by the city of Marquette. We have a publicly elected independent 5-member board. We do operate independently from the city with our own board, and that was a change made to the city charter back in the 1960s. We are locally owned, operated, and controlled. We have roughly 17,000 customers and provide service to the city of Marquette and 9 surrounding townships. A couple of interesting facts here. We're the largest municipal electric system in the state by area, 253 square miles, and we have 450 miles of distribution lines. So we are, as part of the industry and our local community here, we partner with and are members of numerous organizations and industry groups. We are part of a joint action agency under Michigan Public Power Agency. Also participate in joint action under the Upper Peninsula Public Power Agency. And that is kind of a unique group. That was a agency that was formed so that a number of Upper Michigan municipals could be shareholders of ATC when ATC was formed. So a number of us back in the early 2000s actually put our assets into ATC for trade of ownership shares. And now we are shareholders and participate in the ongoing capital calls and all things ATC. We are also members of the American Public Power Association, Michigan Municipal Electric Association. We participate in mutual aid across the state of Michigan and further during big storms. And locally, we participate with the Lake Superior Community Partnership for Economic Development. We have done projects and partnered with the Superior Watershed Partnership for wetlands mitigation, conservation easements, and those types of things. And we are happy to help the Cayman on Trail Network with a wonderful network of mountain bike and hiking trails around our community and on our land as part of our FERC recreational project program for hydroelectric dams. I'll do a quick stop here if there's any general questions about Marquette. Okay.
Tom, you're breaking up a little bit for me. Is that happening for others?
Not me.
No, loud and clear here.
Okay, just me then.
Right.
Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, this is Douglas Jester. Just one quick question.
Sure.
Through Michigan Public Power Agency, do you participate in any particular projects?
So as Mike mentioned, Michigan Public Power Agency is a subscription-based program, kind of a la carte, and we are participating in a few of the committees within that agency for power, not power supply, but MISO services mostly, rec credits for the MIRAC system, and some of these types of things. I'll get to it in a little bit here, but from a power supply standpoint, we're covered internally here, so we don't have a need to go out to them and purchase a lot of power in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tom, this is Mike Prusi. Just a question about the Nokamanon work that you do with the recreation, and you mentioned FERC, is that a FERC requirement for munis or electric power companies in general, or is it just something that on a voluntary basis you participate in?
So there's a number of FERC requirements in our permits to have the hydro facilities that we have. And part of that is to provide some recreation back to the community. The basis of that is we took land away from the community at some point in time, nearly 100 years ago, so we have to provide something back. And a part of our plan is the trail system is kind of written into that plan, along with some other things like boating and fishing and piers and that kind of thing.
Thanks.
Tom, this is Jen Hill. Hi. Do you want to say, I think there's an interesting relationship between the city and the BLP on rate setting. Do you want to just quickly give a high level picture of that? Because that's, I think, the place where the most intersection happens.
Sure. So our independently elected 5-member board actually sets our electric rates, and we do that via a series of cost of service studies from consultants like any other utility would do. And then to get the rates approved, we actually have to go to the city commission for confirmation. And that's really kind of the only overlap between our two boards. So we set the rates and our local city commission will confirm them. I'll jump into the history here a little bit. Obviously, we're at a very rural location, so back in 1889, there was a need to develop our own electric utility, much the same as many other munis and co-ops around the country. We did that by spending $50,000 on 400 acres of land to build a 37 kilowatt hydro plant by an area they called Collinsville, right up from our Wright Street office here. And we started out with 127 customers and 70 streetlights. I find it interesting that you could start an electric utility back then for the same price as an F-150 today. Times have changed. One thing that hasn't changed, and I really find this quote interesting, I saw it in a newspaper clipping from the early 1900s, is electricity today is no longer a luxury, but an essential of life and is required for the health and safety of our community. And that couldn't be any more true today as it was then. So I always like to include that when I give these presentations. I find it very important. The original Collinsville Hydro is no longer. We do still own and operate 2 hydro facilities on the Forestville and Tourist Park basins. They were built in the 1920s. They have a total output of 4 megawatts with an average annual output, depending on rain and snow in any given year, of 18,000 megawatt hours. That's equivalent to roughly 3,000 homes powered for a single year. These are FERC regulated facilities, and we did mention earlier here the public recreation aspect of that is a kind of a really nice thing for a community, as a lot of people use that for boating, fishing, hiking, biking, and swimming. The hydro facilities probably average roughly 6% of our total output for a year. So we are renewable in that sense from the hydros. And one interesting thing on the Tourist Park hydros, that was flooded and not quite destroyed, but highly damaged during the Silver Lake flood. And we rebuilt that one in 2013. So it's the original building, the original hydro wheel, but not the original dam or controls inside.
And Tom, quick question on that Silver Lake flood and then the rebuild. You retained the license to generate through FERC throughout that time?
We did. It required a redo, so we have an updated FERC permit that was approved for the rebuild, and that came with new requirements for wetlands, fish stocking, operational levels, and all the normal FERC requirements. But it was redone at that time.
So with the rebuild, you did have to go through the additional kind of permitting of wetlands and some of the other parameters that were different because it was a rebuild as opposed to just remodeling the existing dam.
Yeah, in a way. Part of it was our permit was coming due anyways, so it was getting looked at. So it was kind of ironic timing. So yes and no.
Okay. I'm sure that was an interesting experience.
Without question. Any other hydro questions? We also have some renewable energy in the form of a community solar garden. Now, we were the Upper Michigan's first community solar garden, and this was a project we built on kind of a demand from our customers. We had customers who maybe had a home that wasn't conducive to putting solar panels in the yard or on the roof, or maybe they live in apartments, but they still wanted to own solar. So we put up a 155 kilowatt solar array, a total of 480 panels. And we currently have 135 separate owners of that. And much like Mike mentioned earlier, we give them a credit back on their bill against the cost of that panel purchase. We also use, to a lesser degree than Mike did, but we did use some of our energy optimization money to bring our panel prices down so that they were affordable for people that wanted to purchase them. Another interesting thing with this, a little side note here, is the grass underneath that solar garden. If you were to drive by there today, is quite tall and full of wildflowers. And it's actually a monarch butterfly sanctuary that are used for the monarch butterfly migration routes, a project we had worked on with the Superior Watershed Partnership. Any solar questions?
Yeah, Tom, I just want to make a comment on your panels there. What we've learned by installing these is if you look at the picture that you have here, you see the silver frame around those panels, and then you see the white back sheet on those panels where they have the little white triangles in there. If you go to a monosilicon module and a black frame with a black backing sheet, that snow shedding is greatly enhanced. And Michigan Tech actually has some video on that, time-lapse video that shows that. And what angle are those modules at? You know, it looks a little shallow.
I don't remember off the top of my head. They were set up by this local installer, Peninsula Solar, to the proper angle for our location. Your point about snow shedding is well taken. You know, if we were to build these again, we would make them quite a bit higher as we get a lot of snow here, and it does build up, just like Mike was saying on his. We actually snow blow periodically between the rows of panels so that we can keep them shedding snow for the entirety of the winter.
And Tom, I think you said this, but what year did you do this this solar garden?
They were put in 17 was the first year they were running.
Yeah, it's just truly amazing how this technology is, I mean, all technology changes rapidly, but it's really interesting to have this conversation in 2020 to look at a project that's just 3 years old and say, oh, we've learned this and this in the meantime. So, but kudos to you guys for stepping out, and, you know, we wouldn't have a chance to learn those things if we weren't testing it somewhere.
Another resource we have is a combustion turbine. It's a GE Frame 5 23 megawatt fuel oil fired unit that was installed in 1978. We only use that for backup and emergency use. It is a black start unit, so it requires no external power to get up and running in the event of an emergency. It's located near the Presque Isle substation, close to our interconnection with ATC. And it has been used in the past during times of emergencies to help support the UP load. Back to the Silver Lake flood that summer, it ran nearly all summer, from what I understand. I wasn't here at the time, but we burnt an immense amount of fuel helping support the UP load when Presque Isle was having its issues because it was flooded. And it has been started actually in other times for issues with ATC and also black starts during the UP. Quite old, but still in very good shape because it has low hours on it. Shira's steam plant. Anybody who has driven into Marquette during the month of December probably recognizes the big lighted Christmas tree on the side of the plant. It's kind of a landmark of the town. It was in operation from 1967 to 2018. There are 3 units in that building with a total output of 78 megawatts, and it supplied over 90% of the power for the MBLP for over 50 years. We retired that from service in 2018. Very important asset for us. It was not retired due to any environmental concerns on the remaining unit that was running. It was retired only for cost, and we had our new plant, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. We're starting the demolition process on that now. We're sending requests for proposals out to contractors and hopefully get the actual movement on demoing that plant started pretty soon. And we still have an active shipping dock at that site, so there is still activity there as we get shipments of bulk materials in for others around our area. Any questions on Shires?
Tom, Jim Kuchiver, you show capacity of that plant at 78 megawatts. What's the city's load, or what's your customer base from a load perspective?
Our peak all-time load was 68 megawatts. Has gone down in recent years due to EO, or I was going to touch on that later, but 68 megawatts. And just a quick clarification, the 78 megawatts is between the three units. Really the only unit that was still functional was the unit number 3 at 44 megawatts. So 1 and 2 one hadn't been used in 30 years, and unit 2 hadn't been used much in the last 15 or 20.
Thank you for that.
Anything else on Shires? Ooh, going backwards. Our latest asset, our newest plant, is the Marquette Energy Center. That's a 51 megawatt reciprocating engine plant that is comprised of 3 17 megawatt reciprocating natural gas fired engines. We do have the ability to back that up with fuel oil. These engines are incredibly flexible operationally. We can start them up and stop them very fast within 5 minutes. They are also black start capable. We have on-site fuel storage for emergencies. You can see the big tank in the picture on the lower left, and that can get us 3 or 4 days of running those engines wide open, full capacity. The flexible operating characteristics of this plant allow us to hourly dispatch against the MISO market. We can pick and choose over a 24-hour period which hours are in our best interest economically and either run or not run. And by doing that, since the plant has started, we've passed back $4.2 million to our customers in fuel surcharge savings. And that has been since really June of 2018 when Shires came offline. We have found it to be so efficient and so flexible that we're actually looking to do a rate decrease in the fall of 2020 because of the efficiencies we've gained by running the way we are running.
Tom, that's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You don't hear that one every day.
Well, we could probably talk for a few hours about that one if you guys want to, but the gist of it is power at night is relatively inexpensive as the demand is low, and we can shut the units off going into the evenings and just buy that power cheaper than we can generate it. And during the day, as load goes up and prices go up, we can dispatch our units based on the price of natural gas against that power. And we can do that very fast and react to those changes. So it's allowed us to really take advantage of the markets more than we ever could in the past. Because of the way the coal plant operated, you couldn't shut it off. You could turn it down a little bit, but you couldn't shut it off directly. So you may have been running it out of the money as the market goes in the evenings and the weekends. That's the real short story.
That's really interesting.
So it's a great thing. Pass back a lot of money, and then it's also going to lead to a rate decrease, which I don't know of in the history of our company if we've ever had one. So that's a good thing.
Can I just add that rates went up 30% in October of 2017? Is that right? And there was also the fixed rate went up at the same time in the face of not knowing, I think, what was going to happen with the bringing on the plant. And I think you've managed it very capably. But it hadn't been a rate increase for over a decade, right? And then the rates went up 30% in 2017.
So we've had a number of small rate increases going back all the way to, I believe, about 2008. In between 2008 and 2016, there was the large one that Jen is referencing for the building of the MEC. Prior to the 2008-2009 timeframe, Marquette, Borderland, and Power hadn't raised the rates in 25 years. So there was a number of changes over the course of the last, 10 or 15 years to get to this point. And now we're, like I said, we're looking at a rate decrease going into this fall, and the study has also indicated that we can keep rates at least flat for the next few years beyond this, hopefully. So
it's very interesting. Thanks.
Hi, this is Paul Rogers. If I can just ask a couple quick questions, kind of tangential. I see you work off of natural gas. Is that fed through a pipeline, or what's your delivery mechanism for that natural gas?
We are interconnected with Northern Natural Gas's pipeline through a Semco line that we had built from our plant to Northern Natural Gas.
Okay, so that's pipeline 5, is that right?
No. I guess I don't know what you're referring to when you say, are you talking about line 5 at the bridge?
Yeah, the line 5.
No, it's not that. This is a line that comes in through Wisconsin across the western UP and kind of ends right around Marquette, actually. The line 5 interconnection is not connected to that. Well, that I know of. It might be in some way down the road.
Interesting. And was that pipeline that you're off of fed specifically for this function, or is it a separate and distinct line for other purposes?
No, the Northern Natural Gas's line has been here for a number of years. That's where everybody, all the towns in Upper Michigan get their natural gas service from. It feeds other industrial loads. And it was here before us. We built I think it was 3,200 foot extension to get to that from our plant, but it had been here for a long time.
Okay, good, thanks. And then I guess just in a general sense, this seems like a significant investment. What size customer base would be required to make this truly sustainable, something like this?
And so when we built the plant, one of our big drivers was reliability. This was at a time when there was concerns that there wouldn't be enough generation in the UP. We did not have the ability to get full network service from the American Transmission Company, and we had an aging coal plant. So we built the plant with the capacity that we could cover all of our needs 100% using this plus our combustion turbine. So in our business case for it, we wanted to cover all of our customers in the event that we had a problem. We wanted to be able to make sure we kept the lights on and then have a unit that was flexible enough that we could operate it efficiently after the fact. So as far as what level of customer base, that would certainly be dependent on the utility, the town, the load, the type of customers that anybody might have. I couldn't speak to anybody else.
Okay, thank you.
Any other MEC questions? I'm sorry, Marquette Energy Center questions?
Yeah, Tom, this is maybe obviously the same technology that UMERC employed when they or deployed when they replaced Presque Isle. Similarities in the units, as far as you know. I mean, I'm thinking technology, manufacturer. Are they the same makers? Any similarities in the technology used?
Yeah, they're actually nearly identical. The only difference between our units and theirs is we have dual fuel, so we have the ability to run natural gas or fuel oil. But they're the same manufacturers. Wärtsilä is the people who make them.
Thank you for that.
A quick comment on that. Somebody, I forget the exact question earlier to Mike, but somebody asked about what we see as the future of power in Upper Michigan. But I think for the good of the group here, everybody should realize that we kind of just went under a generational shift in our generation profile. We went from Presque Isle Power Plant. Mike had a coal-fired plant in Escanaba. We had coal-fired plants here. And within the last 5 years, that's hundreds of megawatts of coal offline and with natural gas replacing it, and potential renewable projects kind of trickling their way in now after this.
Tom, that was me that asked that of Tom, and I was about to ask you that question. I see your environmental impact is pretty impressive there. Outside of natural gas and your backup plant, what's your percentage of renewable?
We generate about 6% of our own, and then we go to the MIREC program like other Michigan utilities to make up our difference for their requirements. It really depends for us on the weather.
Okay.
In the future, we're going to have the ability to actually get involved with more renewable projects because of the plant. We have that flexibility to operate when the renewables might be going up and down with the sun or the wind. So this will give us some leeway to participate in projects down the road. As far as one quick comment on that too, as far as the future of renewable generation in Upper Michigan, there have been a couple of pretty nice projects that came into the area that haven't been implemented. I think one of our bigger concerns here might be siting. Nobody seems to want these around their house or in their backyard, so to speak. So anybody, ours included, and all the other utilities' ability to get involved with larger scale renewables, I think it's going to be challenging up here because of siting and our climate. Obviously, solar in Marquette isn't as good as solar in even Delta County. So it's going to be an interesting future in that regard.
Yeah, the price of the solar are pretty low as far as the technology, and it brings it back to another point. You got to use the right technology up here in solar, and they can perform pretty well, but you have to do metrics on it and see where they are. But yeah, I understand the siting issues.
Right. Our solar does pretty well. It does what we expected. We get about an 11% capacity factor. And for where we are and the amount of snow we get, that was what we anticipated. So we're happy with that.
Okay, thank you.
One more from Jim. Just with natural gas fuel, what's the NOx control technology on the backside?
We have an SCR on the unit that injects urea to control NOx. Now, one of the tanks, the second biggest tank in that picture is a urea tank. And then the large along the stacks, right to the right of the stacks, the large kind of box looking structures in the exhaust ductwork is our SCR.
Thank you.
Any last questions on this? We are also participate with the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, MISO. We are a load-serving entity. We own and operate 100% of our own generating capacity needs behind the meter, so we do not have to go out to the market for any purchases. We are a point-to-point transmission service customer from ATC. We are interconnected with ATC via a single 69 kV interconnection. We own 2 69 kV transmission lines and 3 substations. And our generators can be dispatched and have been as emergency resources for MISO, ATC, or even the balancing authority at times during emergencies. I know this has been a question, MISO has been a question to a lot of people in our community over the years, so I'll pause here quick if there's any questions about our participation with MISO. Nothing. Environmental impact. By taking advantage of the clean, efficient, and flexible nature of the Marquette Energy Center, we've been able to achieve some nice reductions in pollutants. Quick list here, over 99% in sulfur dioxide, 93% in nitrogen oxide, 96% in carbon monoxide. We've had a 75% reduction in what we generate for carbon dioxide. And we send 17,000 less tons of ash to a landfill every year by making that switch. We also offer a volunteer green pricing program. We get renewable energy from solar and hydro plants, and we have energy optimization programs. And we've seen since 2008, when the energy optimization law was put in, we've seen significant reductions in our load because of that. So they're certainly working, and we're meeting and exceeding our expectations on that. Any questions on the environmental impact?
So, Tom, can you hear me?
Yep.
So what is I know the peak load, that was the 2008 timeframe. What is the load? And I don't know if can you speak to right now the COVID reduction as well?
During the state shutdown, we did see a reduction in load, 5 or 10% versus what we'd consider normal. We tried to normalize that for weather a little bit. It has come back now, so we haven't seen too much of a drop at this time. We are certainly a lower peak load than we were back in 2007, 2008, but we get into the 55 to 60 range when we get an extended stretch of heat, and honestly, when Northern Michigan University's back in session too is a big part of that.
Is peak in the winter or in the summer now?
Our all-time peak was in September, actually.
Oh.
Real hot September, so it's summer. From what I understand, long before my time, we used to be a winter peaking utility, but as people have moved away from electric heat, we're now a summer peaking.
Thank you.
Tom, this is Dan Scripps. I've got a couple questions on this. The first is, can you talk a little bit about the voluntary green pricing program and what's offered and whether you've seen uptake from it?
So we have a voluntary green pricing program where a customer can choose to elect to get a certain percentage of their needs from a green project somewhere and pay a little bit of a premium, a penny in our case, to get that. And they can elect 50% or 100% or whatever they choose to go towards a green project. We have not seen a big demand for that. We've had a few customers take advantage of it, but generally speaking, it has not been significant.
And then you mentioned that you used to have a fair amount of electric heat. My sense is that most of your customers get their heat from natural gas. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah, most of the urban customers would all be natural gas, and then a lot of the rural ones now would be propane or maybe even firewood.
Okay, thanks.
I did want to mention we have, customer assistance has come up in the past on some of these meetings, and we do offer assistance through a number of state and federal programs implemented through local agencies. We also created our own program called Generating Change, and that was developed to facilitate donations from our community to help customers in need, and that is implemented through the Salvation Army. And we don't shut off in the winter. In our case, given the weather and where we are, that was a choice we made not to shut customers off in the winter heating months. And that is the end of my presentation. If there's any other questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Well, this has really been fantastic, Tom. I know we're a little bit behind, and I appreciate you taking questions throughout. I think we could probably take, one or two more if necessary, and then hopefully Tom will be willing to hang out or follow up to emails afterwards. Do we have any kind of final questions for Tom?
Well, Liesl had a
Just
comment,
quick
I guess.
Sure, Mike Formansky, I heard you first.
Yeah, just what I was asked a question, and Tom kind of helped answer it too. Just the UP is just set up beautifully right now for renewable. Due to the BLP and UMERC having those RICE units that can ramp up and down and turn on and off. It's just such a beautiful setup for matching up the intermittent nature of renewables. And talked about before, there's been some projects proposed, but they've never reached the construction point yet. So
I think that's a great point, Mike. Did I hear somebody else trying to get in?
This is Douglas. I just have a very short question. Is Marquette a network transmission service customer or a point-to-point customer?
We are
transmission.
I'm sorry, we are point-to-point.
Thank you.
One last question. Is battery storage anywhere on the horizon for either Marquette or Escanaba?
It's certainly not on our immediate horizon. We have not spent any significant time looking into that. You know, I think part of the demand for battery storage would be to shift that peak load. And our utility anyways, we really don't have a peak load problem as we have the resources to cover that if needed. But certainly down the road, if, you know, as the electric industry changes, it could be something we would consider.
All right, so we're gonna, go ahead, Romansky, sorry. Yes, please.
A couple years ago, when we went out for RFPs on our solar facility, we had included an option for 2.1 megawatt hours worth of battery storage, thinking, you know, we could have that 0.9 megawatt unit, you know, 3 hours at 0.7 megawatts is what we're thinking to shift our peak. Because unlike Marquette, you know, we don't own generation assets, we have to buy capacity. So we were looking to shift that peak and then lower our capacity needs going forward. 2 years ago, battery prices were very high, and we continue to watch it. We built that whole solar facility. I mean, 30 years of land lease, the fence, the panels, inverters, the whole shooting match for $1.4 million. That 2.1 megawatt hours of battery storage was going to be $1.8 million. So we did not do it. We found out, you know, it'd be easy to add, you know, 10, 20 years down the road if we so choose. And we continue to watch it, you know, whether it's next year or 2 years down the road, if we do our solar expansion, we'll check battery prices again. But with the prices they were 2 years ago, there was no way we could justify it.
Yeah, I think that's a great addition, Mike. And I will share, just as an anecdote, I had a conversation with a solar installer in the Lower Peninsula earlier this week who said that 50% of their residential installations right now are solar plus battery.
Wow.
There's that much interest, and they can make the numbers work. So pretty interesting. So great. Batteries are a great place to end it. Tom, thanks again. This was really helpful. I hope that you don't mind if our team potentially follows up through email with additional questions, but thanks for taking your time.
No problem.
Great. All right. We are going to switch over now to a presentation from Brett French. Brett, thanks for joining us. I think many of you have known Brett for a while. We're thrilled to have you. Brett, of course, is VP of Business Development and Communications at UPCO. So that, Brett, you may take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Very glad to be here today and looking forward to the conversation. Let me go ahead and tee this up. Hopefully you can see the presentation okay.
Looks great.
And can you hear me okay?
You sound wonderful.
Great. Let's go ahead and get rolling. I'll try to see what I can do to get us back on track with the timeline that you set out. Appreciate the opportunity to start off with a little bit of an overview of UPCO. I think many of you have seen some of these slides and past presentations that we've delivered at the WPI Energy Summit and others, but for those who have not, we provide safe and reliable energy to approximately 52,000 customers throughout 10 of the Upper Peninsula counties. Our service territory is rather large, comes in at about 4,400 square miles, with approximately 4,400 miles of distribution line and 58 substations. We are the owner and operator of 7 hydroelectric generation stations and 2 combustion turbines, and they provide us with approximately 80 megawatts of capacity. I too will take questions as we go through, so if you do have a question, let me know and I'll be happy to stop and address your question at that time. Reliability is certainly key. It's something that we hear from our customers routinely. They want their lights to come on when they expect them to come on. And this is just a graph that provides a little bit of a comparative analysis of the System Average Interruption Duration Index, or SAIDI, for all weather conditions. What you see in the green line is representative of the data for UPCO through the years that are noted there. And the source for this information comes from the Michigan Public Service Commission docket that is set up to track that information. SAIDI, as you may recall, is the total duration of sustained interruptions in a particular year divided by the total number of consumers. And generally, we've been tracking very well. Our SAIDI index has, the numbers have been coming in quite nicely. The one excursion that I would note for 2019, and several of you may recall this, the Thanksgiving storm event that hit the area certainly added significantly to that number, which is why you see such a large uptick, not only in the UPCO numbers, but also some of the other utilities here in the region. Again, we serve customers in 10 of the 15 Upper Peninsula counties. This map shows you the area that we serve. The green dots are our service centers, and we have service centers that are located throughout the territory, provides good access to the communities that we serve. We also maintain our call center and our system control operations center out of the Ishpeming service centers as well. So all of that is located right here in the Upper Peninsula. We truly are a UP-based investor-owned utility today. As Mike alluded to a little bit ago, actually, when you take a look at the UPCO territory, or the 10 counties that we serve, there are 12 investor-owned, cooperatively owned, and municipally owned utilities that also serve customers in those 10 counties. Now, when we take a look at our generation fleet, we've been relying on clean, renewable generation resources for more than 100 years. You see here that we have a number of hydroelectric generation assets that date back as far as 1914, and I've provided you with the capacity of those units to produce energy. The two at the bottom, Gladstone and Portage, are combustion turbines, fairly similar to the one that Tom Carpenter mentioned, GE Frame 5, fuel oil units. And as it turns out, the Portage CT is actually targeted for decommissioning. The other piece I would draw your attention to is that additional renewable energy resources are planned as set forth in the Integrated Resource Plan that was recently approved in the Michigan Public Service Commission docket number 20350. And I'll talk a little bit more about the IRP and some of the key details that came out of that docket here in a couple of slides. Well, again, our hydros provide clean energy and have been doing that for more than 100 years. As it turns out, when we take a look at the production that we get from those hydros, we've been doing fairly well. We consistently exceed Michigan's Renewable Portfolio standard, and this just shows you the production from those assets going back as far as 2014. The green bars show you the actual productivity from the hydros, and the gold line shows you what the RPS standard was set at for those years. I know a lot of questions have already come up pertaining to RECs, MyREC, and the amount of renewable energy that the utilities have under their own ownership. As it turns out, we're actually fairly long in renewable energy credits, and we're continuously in a position to sell our RECs to those utilities that have a need. I wanted to talk a little bit about our power supply and how our resources have evolved over the years. Going back to 2014, which is when UPCO was returned to a UP-based stand-up utility. You take a look at the resources that we had back in 2014 and you compare that to where we are here in 2019 or at the end of 2019, and you see that things have changed quite significantly. The one part that I would draw your attention to is the WPSC contract in the 2014 mix has been replaced by other contracts. And the reason I draw your attention to that is that that change, as well as several other changes that we have implemented, have resulted in lower power supply costs for our customers. And here you see a graph of what those power supply costs were per year and how they've trended to a lower rate as we went forward. I'll stop here just for a second to see if there are any questions.
That chapter, is that due to the type of fuel you're purchasing it from, or what are we talking? Your coal, oil, or what are these power supply costs, what kind of fuel is that on that 51%?
Yeah, the fuel details of those different contracts varies depending upon the contract that you're looking at. I'd have to go into the details of each of those to really answer your question. But at a higher level, what I think is really the important takeaway from this slide is that by being able to go through and competitively bid those contracts out and to look at what is happening with MISO's generation mix and the energy market they run, one thing that you heard from Ken Kopp and Kathy Cole last meeting was that MISO has become pretty effective at wringing some costs out of the power supply side, and we've seen the benefits of that with the contracts that we've been able to negotiate for our customers as well.
Okay.
Is there a lot of seasonal variation in your hydropower? Or intraday variation?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yep. Hydropower. Is there much variation in season or throughout a 24-hour day? Or is it pretty constant?
We generally run the assets to be fairly consistent throughout the day, although we do try to peak pond to maximize the financial benefits that we're able to produce for our customers. Again, similar to what you heard Tom Carpenter say as far as how they run the rice units in Marquette. So we're trying to produce more when locational marginal prices are high and conserve water when they're low, to the extent that we can. Our FERC licenses have fairly tight parameters that we have to operate within, so there is a limitation how much of that we can do. And as far as seasonal differences, as you can imagine, with a impoundment type facility that we have, generally these are ponded facilities as opposed to run of river. We're able to store water when water is available to store. So for the years where we've had a lot of moisture come, in the form of rain and snow, we've been able to turn that into energy. But there are times when you get late into the summer where things start to dry up a little bit and production through the hydro facilities begins to wane.
Hey, Brett. Mike Formansky here. Hey, your pie charts there, I'm assuming these are history. That, in 2019 you had 31% MISO purchases. Do you have flexibility in your contracts, or is you just, MISO purchases are great now with LMPs being low, but are you set up for that long term to have that much exposure to the market?
We have been, yes. So I'll get into that a little bit when we get into the conversation on our integrated resource plan, and I'll show you a comparison between 2019 and where we expect to be after implementing the details of the IRP. Okay. So part of the strategy has been to make those purchases as needed, as opposed to having them backed up with hard contracts for capacity and energy.
Can I ask, Brett, could you I think it's an important point, the big picture of the different, a little bit more of the theory behind that, or you're going to get there on the IRP maybe, but like Marquette Borderland Power doesn't have contracts because they have their own generation. Is that fair to say? And then both of you are backing up with MISO purchase, but Mike, you're not purchasing from MISO in the same way. Is that the difference here?
Yeah, that's a difference. We are a MISO market participant, but rather than just buying, day ahead or real time price energy from the market, it's all, fixed price from NextEra.
So that would be considered an other contract in this pie chart?
Yeah, you could. But for us, it would be, a full circle of the NextEra contract. Okay. Oh, excuse me, with a small slice of our self-owned solar facility.
Okay, thanks. Just trying to line up apples to apples. Thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, Jen, it tends to be a little difficult to do that because each of the utilities develop and implement their own strategy for managing power supply and power supply costs. And largely that is what the integrated resource plan is intended to address. Now, not all of the utilities are required to develop and file integrated resource plans with the commission under the statute that was adopted in the state. So municipally owned and cooperatively owned have a little more latitude in trying to decide exactly what their their resource strategies are going to be on a forward-looking basis.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions regarding the trends that we have seen with the average power supply costs, I'll go on. It gets us directly into the integrated resource plan. So at this point, UPCO is moving forward with the following plan elements. This is pursuant to the February 6, 2020 order of the Michigan Public Service Commission that approved settlement. The first piece that I would touch on is that we are looking to drive the construction of new renewable energy resources in the Upper Peninsula. They generally fall into these three buckets at this time. 30 megawatts of wind under purchase power agreements. These facilities are to be located up in Houghton County. They have not yet been constructed. The next would be 62.5 megawatts of new renewable energy under competitively bid purchase power agreements. And then the third piece would be 62.5 megawatts of new company-owned renewable energy. And those resources would become competitively bid as well. In addition to that, we have increased our energy waste reduction targets to 1.65% in 2020 and 1.75% in 2021. We also increased the net metering distributed generation program cap from 1%, which is set statutorily, to a 2% mark. And we have already moved two existing hydroelectric generation resources to in front of the meter. Essentially what we did was move them so that they are available to claim the capacity out of those at MISO. And by being able to do this, we're able to claim that capacity at little to no additional cost to our customers. Just makes the capacity available. Now, I mentioned that I was going to compare the 2019 resource mix to what it would look like in a post-IRP environment. You have that here on slide 10. And think of the...
Brett, Mike Bruce here, just before we jump on to the next one, the new renewable energy resources in your IRP, and earlier we heard discussions on the difficulties in getting sites approved on local zoning and so forth. How far down the road are you on seeing those potential renewable wind energy and other renewables getting approval as to site and construction planning?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for that question. It's a great question. So for those who have been following this very closely over the last roughly year, we had been working with a developer who had proposed a 125 megawatt solar facility down in Delta County. And that project, as I understand it, is still a viable project, and the developer is still continuing to pursue that project. However, our purchase power agreement that we had with them actually terminated earlier this year under some contract language that existed within the PPA. These other projects that I'm showing here, Mike, the 38 megawatts of wind, 62.5 megawatts of new renewable under competitively bid purchase power agreements. Those projects are either under development or will soon be under development. And we'll know more of the details for the competitively bid PPAs as we get results or responses back from interested developers. We're currently in the RFP process, and we're looking to see what comes out of the process. Similarly, the 62.5 megawatts of new company-owned renewable is under development, and stay tuned on that one as well. I do think that the comments that were offered earlier indicating that routing siting considerations for some of these larger utility scale projects could be a potential issue. It's something that we should all be mindful of, and I would suggest that it is a consideration that we should be working together to resolve.
So Brett, just for clarity, this is Michael. So the 125
megawatts that you have here is not that same project down in Delta County that you were potentially working on with the developer. That's the case? This is a new separate project?
That is correct. If you take a close look at the terms of the settlement agreement that was approved by the commission in our IRP docket, there were some provisions in there that contemplated a potential scenario where that project would not be completed as proposed or planned. And so as a bit of an off-ramp, there were other arrangements that were included as a part of the IRP so that we essentially didn't end up having to go back and rehash some of the details of the IRP. All of this was already contemplated, or essentially a Plan B option was incorporated to continue to move forward with implementing on our integrated resource plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the IRP before I go to the next slide?
Yeah, hi Brett, this is Liesl. Can you talk a little bit about the distributed generation cap going from 1% to 2%, when you anticipate hitting that?
Yeah, let me table that because I have a few slides at the end that deal specifically with customer-owned generation, net metering, and distributed generation. I'll try to cover it there.
Sounds good.
Okay, then here again, when we take a look at kind of in a graphic sense, what that power supply resource mix will consist of when we go to the post IRP environment, that's what you see here. And I would submit that it's helpful to look at these resource mixes in a similar manner that we might our own, retirement investment accounts. Diversification is certainly a key element and is a good strategy when you're talking about a long strategy for the future. And that's what you see here. Now, the company owned and the renewable PPA that I just mentioned in the previous slide are shown at the bottom and bottom right in yellow and gold. The wind, which is new, is shown in green. Our hydro continues to be a strong producer of renewable energy in the top right. And then we will continue to look to MISO and other market purchases for about 17%. So it's a fairly diversified strategy for meeting the long-term needs of our customers.
May I ask you a question, Brett?
Sure.
This is Roman Siderts of Michigan Tech. So a couple of questions. So where do distributed sources fit in, as in customer produced, the prosumer part? And two, what's the timeline of this post-IRP resource mix? So if this is a goal buy, so when is it buy?
Yeah, so the integrated resource plans that are filed with the commission are 5-year plans. We just received the commission order on the settlement agreement, and so we'll be working our way through that. This should get us through approximately the year 2023, plus or minus, and then you'll see revisions to this on a going forward basis, depending on what we're seeing at that time. Your question about where does customer-owned generation fit in, it really doesn't fit into the resource mix because we're not able to really capture the capacity benefits of behind-the-meter generation that customers might install and own. And the energy piece of it really shows up as a lost sales or revenue piece that ends up having to be picked up by the non-participating customers. And there too, I'll get into more of those details in a couple of slides.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions here before I move on? If not, I wanted to include a slide that provided some context and really is a bit of an underlying factor when you're talking about the integrated resource plan and some of the decisions that we have made that have led us to where we are. Generally, we're looking to come up with the best mix of generation resources to provide the maximum financial benefit to the customers we serve. Obviously, we're looking to select resources that provide financial value for the customers we serve. So in other words, they really need to be competitively priced, and they also need to provide reliable benefits to the customers we serve. And with that said, and I think, Mike, you said it very well, the UP is well positioned with the rotating generation assets that we now have, and the fact that many of them are fast start and can provide good complementary backup support to renewables. It gives us the ability to look at some of these other options as we have. Here, I'm just trying to give you a bit of a sense for the range of levelized costs that we see for energy efficiency, MISO market placement, and then you're also seeing the costs that are provided by Lazards. And I believe that you've seen copies of that here recently as well for natural gas combined cycle, wind, utility scale solar, and then residential solar. And it's interesting to note that even to this point in time, the residential solar behind the meter installations are actually coming in at a very high price. So let's spend a few minutes talking about rates. I know that there have been some questions that have been asked previously, and certainly sensitive to the fact that you'd like to avoid a deep dive into the details of rate making if that's at all possible. I'll try to cover it at a fairly high level and see what questions come as a result. But generally speaking, rates are set to recover the utility's annual revenue requirement by calculating the cost to serve each customer class. And we have a variety of those. The larger buckets are the residential, commercial, and industrial. And then, of course, we also have street lighting and a number of other products that we sell under various tariffs. Rates are a function of variable costs, power supply, fixed costs, distribution. Think of it as more than just poles and wires. There's a lot that goes into the distribution bucket. I showed you the slide earlier where you saw we have a number of service centers, our call center, our system control center, a variety of those types of assets, everything that's required to provide the distribution of energy. And then, of course, they're also a function of public policy costs and the cost of capital. Power supply, distribution, and some public policy charges are assessed on a volumetric basis or a dollars per kilowatt hour. So the more kilowatt hours you consume, the higher your bill is going to be for those line items. Certain other costs are actually assessed as a fixed monthly charge, and I'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute as well. Our large commercial and industrial customers are also assessed a demand charge, and essentially this is a charge for arranging for the capacity needs that they have as a large consumer. I'll talk about that a little bit too in the context of our demand response program at the very end. Now, I mentioned the total annual revenue requirement. That's kind of the basis for determining what rates need to be. The utility needs to bring in a certain amount of revenue to the organization to pay the bills and to provide reliable service, which is our charge. Here you can see what those annual revenue requirements were as set in the 3 different rate cases that would be the 3 most recent cases dating back as far as January 2014. So currently we're in just at about $100 million per year revenue requirement. So when you go through the cost of service models and you determine what the rate should be for the different customer classes, and you kind of map out where rates have been since 2014, this is the graph that is produced. The green line shows you where residential rates have been. The kind of the brown line shows you where the small commercial and then larger commercial and industrial have been. And I think it's interesting to note generally that the trend, with the exception of the P1 customer class coming out of this last rate case in 2019 was an increase. Rates generally have been trending downward, particularly when you take into account the inflationary rate, which is shown in the black line. And this is something that we've been working very long and hard to achieve. The other piece that I would point out here is that UPCO actually has some of the lowest industrial rates of the state. So when you get over into the CPU or WP3 tariff rate, the large commercial, large industrial, we're able to provide very low rates to those customers. And that's a bit of a function for how they are connected and what the cost to serve that customer class is. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the behavior of our residential customers and what we're seeing as far as their utilization. So here, clearly, we're showing, going back as far as 2013, what the annual residential sales in a kilowatt hour basis has been. So this is essentially an all-in number. And what you see generally is the trend is decreasing. So our residential customers as a class are using less energy, and considerably less. And of course, this is on a weather normalized basis. Well, that's very important because when we try to better understand what's driving rates, and particularly higher rates, lower usage leads to higher volume-based rates, particularly when you're assuming a fixed distribution cost to be allocated to those customers and a fairly fixed customer count for the customer class, in this case residential. So what I'm showing here is the rate, the distribution rate that would have to be charged to the residential customers if the average residential consumption on a per month basis were 250 kilowatt hours, 500 kilowatt hours, 750 kilowatt hours, up to 1500 kilowatt hours. And what I'm going to show you on the next slide, and then I'll toggle back, is that as it turns out, UPCO's customers, residential customers, consume less energy than the state average by quite a bit, at 407 kilowatt hours, where the state average is 600, and quite a bit less than the national average, which comes in at about 1,000 kilowatt hours per month. Now, when I go back here, what you see is that, we're pretty far to the left on this slide. And if you take a look at what our current distribution rate is for residential customers, it's just north of 10 cents. The other thing that is very important to note and very interesting to note is that when you take a look at the average monthly bill that a residential customer is paying, it's coming in at essentially the average for the state, $88 for an UPCO customer, $85 for the state average, and the national average is $120 per month.
Brett, this is Douglas Chester. Just a couple of questions related to this. Do you know offhand what % of your residential customers are seasonal and what are year-round?
I don't have that number at my fingertip. I can certainly get it for you.
Okay, and then these averages that you're presenting, these are all residential customers, whether they're seasonal or year-round? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the interesting point to note there, and we talk about it internally quite often, is that we have a number of seasonal customers that are in fairly remote locations, and they may be the only one or one of very few customers to be served off of the distribution assets that we have. And so when you take a look at the fact that we're charging a relatively low fixed monthly charge and we're receiving very little revenue for the volumetric charge, arguably they're not paying for their share of the utilization of the system, the assets that they're deriving benefit from. So going on, I wanted to provide an independent comparison of the average monthly bills as well. This is some data and information that was produced by Citizens Utility Board, or CUB. Here what they concluded was even though UPCO has the third highest residential rate in the state of the utilities they looked at, the average monthly bill is nearly the state average. Again, I kind of alluded to it, but it's a point that I will make here, and I'll make again a little bit further on, and that is our fixed monthly charge of $15 per month is below what other UP-based utilities are charging. A number of them are at or near $25 per month. And a higher monthly fixed charge helps to reduce the volume-based rates, but it also creates parity or equity between peer customers, in this case, the residential class. The last piece, and it was kind of shown graphically earlier as well, but our residential rates have declined approximately 12% since 2016. And then the graph to the right of the slide gives you a sense for where UPCO falls relative to the mix. You see that we're in more or less the middle of the pack. Any questions on that piece before I move on to customer-owned generation? If not, let me proceed, and I'll try to speed it up a little bit as I know we're getting a little bit long on the time clock. Net metering, distributed generation continues to be a hot topic, has been for years and probably will be for some time into the future. I know both the House and Senate are actively engaged in conversations on this topic today. And I thought it would be helpful if I provided you with a little bit of an overview for what it has looked like for UPCO and UPCO customers and where we are relative to the cap, first the statutory cap and then the voluntary cap that we agreed to in the last rate case. So again, net metering program was established back in 2008 under Public Act 295. Regulated utilities were required to permit customer participation up to a 1% cap. We hit that cap in June of 2016. The program actually created cross-subsidization between participating and non-participating customers. And the program was phased out or is in the process of being phased out under legislation that was adopted in 2016 that effectively created the distributed generation program. On the right, I show you essentially the experience that we've had in terms of the number of customers that have been participating over the years, as well as the amount of installed capacity that those systems represent in the gold line. Well, the impact of net metering or distributed generation on power supply rates is, as I'm showing it here, we have some net metering customers that have actually received as much, if not more than 20.5 cents per kilowatt hour for the excess energy they produce and exported to the distribution system. By comparison, our average power supply cost was less than 4 cents per kilowatt hour in 2019. So you can see there's quite a difference of approximately fivefold between what we generally are paying for power supply versus what we're crediting customers that produce excess energy.
Hey, Brett.
Yes.
Was that rate, that 20.5 cents, is that like a Public Service Commission approved rate?
Well, the methodology was essentially they were receiving the fully loaded retail rate. So whatever they would have paid if they consumed that kilowatt hour, they were receiving back in the form of a full credit. And that has been part of the conversation as the policy has been developed over the years. Under the Public Service Commission approved distributed generation rider that came out of our last rate case, we're currently applying a credit of 7.4 cents per kilowatt hour for those customers that are now participating in the DG program. And this is applying the MPSC approved inflow outflow method. And even that is still nearly double the company's average power supply cost for 2019. Now, one thing I would point out, these are just pass-throughs. The utility in this case is really doing nothing more than collecting from the non-participating to pay those who are participating. So any of these costs that are being incurred are being recovered through the power supply cost recovery mechanism that is also a docket, a case that we work through with the MPSC. Now, when I shift over to the distribution rate, this is where things become a little bit more interesting. Our 2% cap is set at 2,560 kilowatts based on a 5-year average demand. The 1% was 1280. The 1% cap, as it turns out, equates to approximately 1.5 million kilowatt hours of customer-owned energy per year, or approximately $156,000 of revenue shift from participating customers to non-participating customers. The question's been asked of us on a couple of occasions, well, at what point does that really become material? And when you do a deep dive into the analysis, what you conclude is that at about 8% participation rate, that equates to $1 million in revenue shift, or approximately 1% of our annual revenue requirement. And you begin to find yourself in a position where you're going to see an uptick or upward pressure on the distribution rate, which is actually separate from the power supply rate. And when you monetize that, that $1 million shift in revenue increases the distribution rate by about almost 0.5 cents. So when we've been asked the question, particularly in the context of, well, what would you have to do to eliminate the cap? The candid answer is that utilities would have to charge a higher monthly fixed charge so that all customers are essentially paying the same rate for utilization of the distribution system, and then they're free to choose how they utilize the distribution system. Some of them, with behind the meter installations, may use it for a battery backup type support. Others may utilize it for full requirements, and everyone would be free to choose. And this is very comparable to what you see for cable, whether it's Spectrum or some of the others, or cell phone. Basically we pay a fixed monthly rate to utilize the system however we see fit, and everyone's free to do what they choose. So that's the answer to the question. And when we actually run the numbers for our example using current data, it comes out to be a $60 monthly customer charge would be required to resolve the issue, permitting the cap to be eliminated. Now, I said earlier, our fixed monthly charge currently for a residential customer is only $15 per month per meter. And again, some of the other UP-based utilities have charges that are approximately $25 per month. Now, Madam Chair, I know you asked the question, and I don't believe I've answered it yet. Under the 2% cap, how close are we to hitting it? We're getting pretty close, and my guess is that probably within the next couple of months, we will receive applications that will put us up to that cap at the 2% level.
Brett, this is Michael one more time. Once you do hit that 2%, people are still able, so people would still be able to install a solar system. However, there would just be no additional interconnection agreement where there wouldn't be that net metering back and forth. Or is there no interconnection agreement allowed, and they would have to use everything behind the meter with a battery or something along those lines, right size it so they're not actually putting out to the grid. What's the situation there, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So our position is that we would permit customer installations to continue to take place after the cap was reached. However, the customer would not be permitted to participate in the net metering or the distributed generation credit side. So if they were to produce excess energy and push that out to the distribution system, they would not receive a credit for that. Essentially, we would turn the outflow channel of the meter off. They would be billed for the energy they consume. They would not receive a credit for the energy they produce that is beyond their own on-site consumptive needs. And they would have to follow all of our customer-owned generation requirements that are posted on our website, including the application, the technical studies, the interconnection agreement, and the like. So, and that seems to be, at least in our estimation, a pretty good match for what the legislature intended when they created the legislation, in that they require the customers' systems to be sized fairly directly to what their annual consumptive requirements are. In other words, they're not expecting huge credit balances to be developed over the course of time.
Right, Roman Sidortsov, if I may. Any modeling, right, is based on assumptions, and I'm seeing in the third point, when 8% participation equates to 1 million in revenue shift, that's presuming the current rate of consumption, right? So this is the presuming the trend, right?
If I understand your point, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so and I'm wondering, and maybe you will touch upon that later in the presentation, but I was wondering if there are any plans to increase or there are plans by UPCO to increase consumption. We've been talking about electrification of various energy services, and I was wondering if there are any plans for the company to get in one of those programs.
Yes, absolutely. And I think as others have offered comments here earlier this afternoon, we too see it the same way. We believe electrification certainly is an opportunity for the future, but in many respects, that is dependent upon customer behaviors. So we're working very closely with various customer and stakeholder groups to see how those types of initiatives can be moved forward in the territory that we have. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Brett, this is Douglas Chester. I just want a clarification from you on these participation numbers. The cap that is in law is in terms of the capacity of the customer generation compared to your average or your annual peak demand average over the last 5 years. Is that the definition that you're using here, or is this as a percentage of your energy?
No, it's the 5-year average demand, as you see at the first bullet point, Douglas.
Right. So the 8% participation would be just still represented in capacity terms.
I believe that's correct, and we applied a capacity factor that we know to be reasonably reflective for the customers that have installed behind the meter systems.
Okay.
And I want to say that capacity factor was 13%. I can confirm that and get back to you if you would like.
That sounds about right, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood the terms you were using. That's all. Thank you.
Yep, very good question.
Brett, Dave Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
Are you guys concerned, or do you have any discussions internally about customers going off grid in town? I mean, with the drop in the storage prices following the same drop as the solar panels and inverters, that the price is coming down quite a bit. And I've just done a couple of customers that were considering going off grid, period, and just not using any of the distribution lines, any of that. Is that any concern for you guys that as the prices keep falling?
Yeah, I would say that, all utilities are very mindful of exactly the point you're making. Although when I go back to this slide, Dave, let's see, right here, again, I think that when you really do you put a pencil to paper and you crunch the numbers, going off grid and truly cutting the cord with the utilities so that you have no backup resource is a more costly proposition than just behind the meter installations at a residential facility. So, again, when you take a look at the numbers that Lazards has put out, 15 to nearly 25 cents a kilowatt hour, that's pretty high. And when you add to that storage or, a backup generator that you can fire with some form of fuel to serve your needs on site, you're talking even above that point. So again, it's certainly something that we're very mindful of. But I think that's pretty far out into the future at this point, with the exception of some unique one-off scenarios. People are really pretty far out into the woods, and there are several of those installations up here. Or folks that have significant means and for any variety of reasons choose to go off grid. And we certainly, we understand that from the utility side.
Okay, thanks.
This may or may not be related, but since demand is also going down, and I know that's impacted Marquette, Borderland, and Power, but I'm wondering, since you have a different base with industrial customers, and then I believe you also sell to Ontonagon REA, and you're the primary supplier or the sole supplier to Ontonagon, if you could clarify that. So it seems like part of this also is really about just load overall, and nationally loads going down. I mean, folks just are using less, and until we start moving into electrification. So we're just at this moment, it seems like, where there could be a change, but so we're managing a downward, sorry, two ideas at the same time. So we're managing a downward slope, but with your customer mix, are other customers potentially going up in the fact that you're serving an entire REA? Does that impact any of this?
Yeah, Jed, great question. First of all, let me clarify. We do not serve Ontonagon REA. They are no longer a full requirements customer of OPCO. At this point, we don't have any municipally owned or cooperatively owned customers that are full requirements customers at wholesale of OPCO.
Ah, okay, thank you.
So that's quite a point of distinction to be made there. Yeah, generally, I think you're really hitting at the crux of the matter. Demand is decreasing, utilization is decreasing, you're managing against the curves that I've shown you. And both from a power supply and a distribution charge perspective, you're creating upward pressure on rates. That's why the slide that I showed you earlier, where we've been successful at reducing residential rates by approximately 12% in recent years, is not insignificant. So we've been able to achieve that goal in light of the fact that we're essentially, swimming against the current.
Hey everybody, this is Lisa. These are some fantastic questions and discussion points. I'm just gonna note that it is 3:20 and know that hopefully we can invite Brett back for additional conversations, but wanna give Brett the time to get to the end of his slide deck before we hit our 3:30 mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have just a couple of slides remaining. Just as a follow-on to the text slide, I wanted to show that same point graphically. So here we have the distribution rates along the left, distribution rate increase as a percent along the right, and then the participation rates in the bars, as well as what kind of an impact upward rate pressure that would have on distribution rates. And again, this would be for distributed generation participation. I know these slides will be made available both on the website, and I believe the task force members have received copies of the slide deck as well. So I welcome any questions after today's meeting. If you want to reach out to me directly, feel free. I'm only going to touch on energy waste reduction and demand response. They too are very important programs for us. Our EWR program has reduced energy consumption significantly since its enactment. We began administrating the program in January of 2018. One point that we're very proud of is that program is delivered through partnerships with local nonprofits, primarily Superior Watershed Partnership and Northern Initiatives. It's very customer centric, and we've been able to be very responsive to the customer needs. A couple of key examples are the Father's Day flood of 2018 that hit the greater Houghton and Keweenaw County areas, as well as some of the things that have developed out of COVID-19 to this point. And we actually are online and working with our partners to provide virtual home energy assessments. That's been very popular. The other piece here that I would touch on, and it's not insignificant, it's a very key goal of ours, is to find ways to expand the program more effectively into the low income segment of the customer base. And on demand response, I'll leave you with a couple of points here too. And Jen, I know you asked the question a couple of meetings ago about whether or not demand response or interruptible rates was part of the reason why industrial and large commercial rates were as low as they are up here. I think part of the answer is tied into the demand response in the slide that I'm showing you here. A full 42% of our annual capacity requirements are met through demand response resources. And so when we run the cost of service models to determine the cost to service those classes, that is reflected, and of course it's reflected in the form of a lower rate. Higher demand response actually results in lower purchase capacity costs for customers. And again, just the point I was making. And the only thing that we're watching very closely, and Ken Kopp alluded to this from ATC as well last meeting, but as we see more participation in the demand response program, we may find that system reliability, system security is somewhat at risk. And you know, that's a challenge for ATC and MISA to really manage, but we're working closely with them as the transmission service provider to companies like UPCO to be sure that we don't end up in a situation where our customers' reliability is being adversely affected by the amount of demand response that we see in the footprint. And I think that's all I have. So with that, I don't know if there are any remaining questions. I'm happy to field them if there is time.
Hey, Brett, on slide 14 where you got the rates trending downward, while you were talking, I jumped on the website and looked up your CPU rate class. That's a 2010 filing. So all this variation, is this based more just on customer usage patterns and taking more, you know, off-peak energy, or how does it vary so much?
Some of the answer to your question, Mike, at a high level probably comes in the form of adjustments that are made on the power supply cost recovery rate. That tends to be variable from one month to the month, or certainly can be variable. And if you recall, during some of these periods of times, there were SSR costs that were being passed on to customers that were included in the PSCR. And there were also periods of time where there were reimbursements for UPCO customers being made or credits applied through the PSCR for SSR. So your question is probably a bit more complicated than what I'd be able to address here today.
Okay.
Well, Brett, I really appreciate the presentation and your willingness to not only give it, but also take questions as we go throughout. I hope we can follow up with you and certainly, you know, leave open the opportunity to invite you back. I also appreciate the fact that you've been participating in these all along and are aware of where our conversations have gone. I think that makes for a really valuable presentation. So thanks for your time and thanks for being here with us today. I am going to shift over. Thanks, Brett. I'm going to shift over quickly. We've not received any requests for public comment, but I do want to make that time available. I think there's been a lot of good dialogue in the course of the questions with the presenters that helps us move forward that component on the agenda that was task force work period time. So I feel like, you know, we all can have conversations kind of outside of those just to set up for the next meeting in September. But I do want to make sure that we have a chance for public comment if there is anyone who wants to give public comment. So we've not received anything over email, and I did not see anyone raise their hand. Oh, we do have a chat box. Yes, okay, we've got a couple of public comments. Great, so I'm glad we have time. And then Kimber, let me know if you see any more that come in through email or anything. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask our folks who want to give public comment. I'm setting up my timer. Sorry, doing two things at once. Setting up my timer. And I'm going to ask Renee, it looks like you were first. Renee Richer, if you would like to unmute yourself and go first with public comment, that would be great.
Great. Hi, this is Renee Richer from Escanaba Township in Delta County. It was nice to have Brett French describe some of the challenges facing UPCO and some of the issues around UPCO. So I appreciate that. Again, I just want to encourage you to be open to the idea of more solar cooperatives and distributed generation in the area that is covered by UPCO. So consumers in that area are greatly limited in what townships or other communities can develop in terms of providing their own energy. I would also like to encourage you to pay attention to the process of requests for proposals, and in order that there may be more successful renewable energy projects in these types of areas, to take into consideration early community involvement. So I think there will be less opposition as well as community benefit agreements. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Appreciate it. And since I was muted, my timer wouldn't have worked anyway. So thank you for observing our time limit. Okay, next I've got Will Lytle. So Will, if you'd please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Will Lytle. I'm a PhD candidate in the Environmental and Energy Policy Program at MTU, and I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Hancock. I would like to thank the task force for assembling these presentations and hosting this discussion today. The presentation by UPCO describes consumer-produced energy as being subsidized by residential ratepayers. But what about the subsidization of corporate and industrial rates? UPCO has some of the lowest industrial rates in the state. Those industries are not being depicted as being subsidized by residential ratepayers. What about the shareholders and investors expecting a return on investment from a system built 100 years ago? Are their profits not being subsidized by residential ratepayers? As UPCO pursues efficiency programs that reduce the volume of energy consumed by residences, residential kilowatt-hour rates increase. So as our community responds to higher electricity costs by using less electricity, UPCO suggests that we charge them more, including an exorbitant base rate that pits residential consumers against people trying to improve their cost/environmental impact by personally paying for customer-owned renewables. If a base rate of something like $65 a month is approved, surely more residents will leave the grid. This will again increase rates for the remaining residents. So the presentations from today begin to answer several questions that the task force has been considering. Is it possible to transition towards renewable energy? Yes. Is it possible for community-owned utilities to provide reliable energy? Yes. Is it possible to end subsidies for industrial users and utility investors? Yes. Is it possible to accomplish these things while failing to hold corporate monopolies accountable for their exploitation of the Upper Peninsula resources? No. The task force was not assembled because everything is working well. The task force needs to make informed recommendations that will benefit the entire UP, not just a handful of investors or businesses. I urge the Energy Task Force to prioritize innovation, sustainability, and justice in their work, and thank them very much for their service.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. And we always appreciate seeing repeat offenders, shall I say. So thanks for joining us here again today, although we didn't get to see you. Michael Buzzle, sorry to butcher your last name. My first name's Liesl, so I take a prerogative to butcher people's last names. If you would like, you can please unmute yourself and have 3 minutes to address the task force.
Yes, thank you. It's Mike Buza. I'm from the Sierra Club Nepicine Group. And a couple of things that I think was missed out of the base rates. I'm kind of following up on the previous speaker's comments. A couple things I see missing out of the base rates is that most of the energy coming from the UP right now is from fossil fuels of some sort. And that doesn't include environmental degradation, the cost of that, and also healthcare issues as a result of that. And I think if we're talking about the rates of electricity, those sorts of things should be included and taken into account for when individuals are putting solar on their homes. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Great, thank you, Mike. And I missed Colleen Goddard. Colleen, I apologize. It looks like you had your hand up. If you're still with us, Colleen, if you would please unmute and have 3 minutes to address the task force, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, well, this is Pat. I'm with Colleen right now for the meeting, but I'm also with Ms. Dig 811 as a education specialist. And what I'd like to do is just announce that.
It's very hard to hear.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Pat, you sound far from the mic. If you can be closer, that would be really helpful.
Sure, I'll get it right up to me. I'm Pat Goddard. I'm with Ms. Dig 811. I'm an education specialist, and Ms. Dig 811 has developed and implemented a marine ticket. I know everyone knows about Line 5 and situations going on with that. We have many other infrastructures and cables running through many of our waterways, lakes, streams, marshes. So what we have done is we developed a ticket where notification can be given to facility owners that have those type of facilities that are lying in a body of water. Any type of damage to any infrastructure in that water is extensive, and it's a danger to the environment and ecosystems. So we've developed this ticket to help protect those facilities and the environment. So we just want people to know that it's out there and that it's a option when you are digging and run into some type of body of water. Thank you for your time.
Great, thanks for sharing, Pat. And please feel free to email materials to us too if you've got materials you'd like to see, if you'd like to have in front of the task force. So our email for everyone, not just for Pat, EGLE, E-G-L-E, -upenergy@michigan.gov, and that'll be distributed to the task force members. All right, thank you. I'm looking to see, I've got another one. All right, Catherine Andrews, if you would like to unmute, we'd love to give you 3 minutes of time in front of the task force. Catherine, we can see you're still muted. Catherine, you're still muted. Oh, there you're great. Now I think you're unmuted.
Thank you very much. I clicked on the wrong one. Thank you.
No worries.
So the general manager of the Ontonagon REA, I am an REA customer, and the general manager told me that they buy energy from UPCO, which kind of conflicts with Tom's answer that he said they're no longer a full requirement. UPCO, or REA is no longer a full requirement customer. So does that mean REA buys some power from them and not all power? Or can Tom answer that question for me?
So we don't, we're happy to receive comment, but the task force isn't prepared right now to answer questions, but we'd be happy to have discussions offline and see if we can point you in the right direction to get additional information.
Okay, so I guess to put that in the form of a comment, there is a discrepancy from what the general manager of the REA told me and Tom's comments about. Okay, thank you.
Okay, get you flagging that. Thanks. And I've got Adewale. Adewale, I meant to loop back and see if you wanted to make a comment because I saw you earlier. So yes, please, Adewale, 3 minutes. The floor is yours.
Hi.
Can't hear you yet. So there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to make this comment. And my comment goes to UPCO. I had an initial question that was to Mike, which has been sort of taken care of. So my comment to UPCO is what is stopping? It's more of a question and something like a food for thought for the utility. What stops them from having a scenario or developing a scenario of 100% energy in this region, their customer, and see what that costs, or having to show the public what that cost will come up to be versus the business as usual, what this current scenario will be. Because I see that right now they have the Pro IRP, which is going to have increase in hydro and some of the renewable, well, through PPA. But what will be that scenario of 100% renewable energy in this region with a lot of resources that are here? We've got wind resources, we've got solar in the summer. It's shining right now. We've got hydro, and interestingly, from OPCO's publication, hydro runs all through the year. So if I'm going to take that, from our OPCO, what's stopping OPCO from having a scenario, building a feasibility for 100% renewable energy in this region, and through different combinations of collaboration with communities, with individuals, to make that happen, and at what cost would that be versus what the scenario is currently? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Adewale. Appreciate it. Another one of our regular guests, which is really helpful. All right, I think that's everything I've seen for comments. I'm going to look back to Kimber and just see, Kimber, if you received anything else. I don't think I saw anything over email.
No, we have not received any more in the email box either.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, with that, I'm going to say that the really good back and forth during our presenters today will be our work period for the day, and we'll use that as input to build the agendas going forward. We'll follow up with you with recommended dates for the next few months. Please feel free to be in touch, particularly if there are, as you're analyzing what you heard today, if that leads you in a particular direction for presentations that you'd like to see. And our goal going forward will be to skip August, but then do shorter duration meetings, but probably monthly, to take us to the end of the year. So as usual, I'm so grateful for everybody who is willing to participate, and for all of our regular attendees from the public. I think it's been made a much more rich discussion. And I know that I'm constantly impressed by the depth of the questions from all of you. So I thank you for your time, and we look forward to talking soon. Too bad it's not in person, but we'll do the best we can. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leo.